An army so huge that it shook the earth. An elephant so huge that it terrified even the bravest warriors. The target? The holy Kaaba. But the protector, not a human army, but Allah Almighty, through a flock of small birds. That was the time when a king named Abraha, blinded by pride and jealousy, swore to destroy the house of Allah. He marched with 60,000 soldiers and a mountain-like elephant named Mahmud to crush the Kaaba stone by stone. The Arabs were helpless. They had no weapons to stop him. But history has witnessed a miracle. When the huge elephant was ordered to attack the Kaaba, it knelt down and refused to disobey Allah. And when the pride of the army reached the sky, Allah sent His own air force, the Ababeel birds. Armed with burnt clay stones, these tiny birds destroyed an entire empire, melting their flesh like straw. Join us as we witness how Allah protects His house and why this event paved the way for the birth of our beloved Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. The day birds defeated an empire. The true story of Surah Al Fil. Have you ever heard of a battle where the sky rained stones? A battle where a massive army, led by giant elephants, was defeated not by swords or arrows, but by small, fragile birds? This is not a myth. This is a reality recorded in history and preserved eternally in the Holy Quran. Today, we take you back to the year of the elephant. We will witness the arrogance of a king who challenged the house of Allah, and we will see how his mighty body was torn apart by a creature as small as a fingertip. Stay with us to uncover the detailed, true story of Surah Al Fil, a lesson that will make you shiver and strengthen your trust in the Almighty. The origin of arrogance. To understand this miracle, we must first travel to Yemen. The ruler at the time was a man named Abraha al-Ashram. Abraha was a man of power, but his heart was filled with jealousy. He noticed that year after year, Arabs from all over the peninsula would travel hundreds of miles through the burning desert. Where were they going? They were going to Mecca to visit a simple square structure made of stones, the holy Kaaba. Abraha could not accept this. He thought, "Why do they honor that old stone house? I will build something far better." So, in the city of Sana'a, Abraha built a massive cathedral called Al-Kulais. History tells us it was a wonder of the world. He built it with colorful marble, gold, and silver. He decorated it with precious jewels, hoping to dazzle the eyes of the Arabs. Once it was finished, Abraha arrogantly declared his intention. He wrote a letter to the king of Abyssinia saying, "I have built a church the likes of which has never been built for any king before, and I will not rest until I force the Arabs to turn their pilgrimage away from the Kaaba and towards this cathedral." News of this arrogant plan spread across Arabia. The Arabs, who were the descendants of Ibrahim and Ismail, loved the Kaaba more than their own lives. They were furious. One night, a man from the Arab tribe of Kinana lost his control. He sneaked into Abraha's luxurious cathedral under the cover of darkness. To show his utter disgust and disrespect for this replacement Kaaba, he defecated, or relieved himself, inside the church and smeared the walls with filth. When Abraha entered his shining cathedral the next morning and saw the filth, he asked, "Who dared to do this?" He was told it was an Arab from the people of the Kaaba. At that moment, Abraha's jealousy turned into a fire of rage. He didn't just want to divert the pilgrims anymore. He wanted revenge. He swore a terrifying oath. "By God, I will march to the Kaaba and I will tear it down, stone by stone, until nothing is left." He immediately prepared an army so huge that the earth shook when they marched. 60,000 soldiers gathered. But the terrifying part was the vanguard. Abraha brought elephants, animals the Arabs had never fought against. At the front was a massive elephant named Mahmud, a beast of war meant to smash the walls of the Kaaba. The Arabs heard the news and trembled. They knew they had no power to stop an army of this size. The march towards destruction had begun. The wisdom of Abdul Muttalib and the trust in Allah. The massive army of Abraha had now reached the outskirts of Mecca, camping at a place called Al-Mugamas. The ground trembled under the feet of their soldiers, and fear spread through the hearts of the locals. To show his dominance before the attack, Abraha sent his troops to raid the surroundings. They looted the wealth of the Quraysh, capturing cattle and livestock. Among the stolen property were 200 camels belonging to Abdul Muttalib, the grandfather of our beloved Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and the chief leader of Mecca. Abdul Muttalib was not a man to hide in fear. He rode out to meet Abraha in his camp. The meeting of two leaders. History records that Abdul Muttalib was a man of majestic appearance, tall, handsome, and radiating a natural dignity that commanded respect. When Abraha saw him enter the tent, he was so struck by Abdul Muttalib's noble presence that he could not bear to let him sit on the floor. In a rare display of respect, the arrogant king Abraha descended from his golden throne and sat on the carpet next to Abdul Muttalib. Through his translator, Abraha asked, "What brings the leader of Mecca here? What do you want?" The atmosphere was tense. Abraha expected this Arab leader to beg for mercy, to offer gold, or to plead for the safety of the holy Kaaba. But Abdul Muttalib spoke calmly. "I have come to ask for my 200 camels that your soldiers have taken. I want them back." The historical dialogue. Abraha was stunned. His respect turned into disappointment and shock. He looked at Abdul Muttalib and said, "When I first saw you, I was impressed by your nobility, but now I withdraw my respect. I have come to destroy your house of worship, the foundation of your religion, and the honor of your forefathers, and you do not say a word about that? Instead, you worry about a few camels?" It was then that Abdul Muttalib gave a reply that has been etched into Islamic history forever, a reply that showed his understanding of who truly holds power. He looked Abraha in the eye and said, "I am the Lord of the camels, so I protect them. As for the house, the Kaaba, it has a Lord, Allah, and He will protect it." Abraha, blinded by arrogance, sneered, "Your Lord cannot protect it from me today." Abdul Muttalib simply replied, "That is between you and him." Abdul Muttalib took his camels and returned to the city. He knew that the Quraysh did not have the army or weapons to fight 60,000 soldiers and elephants. This was a battle for the heavens. He went straight to the holy Kaaba. In a scene that breaks the heart with its sincerity, the old chieftain stood alone in front of the black stone. He grabbed the metal ring of the Kaaba's door, clinging to it like a child clinging to its mother. Tears streamed down his face as he cried out to Allah. "O Allah, a man protects his own home and goods, so you protect your house. Do not let their cross and their strength conquer your strength today. If you leave them to destroy our Qibla, then you know best what you intend to do." After this intense prayer, having placed his total trust in the Almighty, Abdul Muttalib ordered the people of Mecca to evacuate the city. Men, women, and children climbed to the tops of the mountains and hid in the caves, watching from above, waiting to see what the Lord of the Kaaba would do against the army of the elephant. The miracle of Mahmud, the beast that obeyed Allah. The night passed, and the sun rose over the valley of Mecca. The moment Abraha had waited for had arrived. He gave the order to mobilize the army. The ground shook as the troops lined up. At the very front stood Mahmud, the gigantic elephant. He was decorated with heavy armor and iron chains, looking like a moving mountain. Abraha was confident. He believed that no structure made of stone could stand against the force of this beast. The plan was simple. The elephant would charge, smash the walls of the Kaaba, and the soldiers would destroy the rest. The handler shouted, "Forward, to the Kaaba!" But then something impossible happened. Instead of charging forward, the massive elephant knelt down. He didn't just stop, he lowered his giant body to the ground in a posture of refusal. The soldiers were confused. They shouted at him, "Stand up, Mahmud!" But the beast remained still as a rock. Confusion turned to anger. The handlers began to beat the elephant. They struck him with iron bars. They poked him with sharp hooks to force him up. The animal was in pain, but he refused to take a single step towards the house of Allah. To test if the elephant was sick or tired, the handlers turned him away from the Kaaba. They pointed him toward the south, Yemen. Immediately, the elephant stood up and started trotting eagerly. They pointed him toward the north, Syria. He was ready to run. They pointed him toward the east. He moved without issue. But the second they turned his face back toward the Kaaba, he instantly collapsed to his knees again. My brothers and sisters, realize what was happening here. This was not just a stubborn animal. This was a creature receiving a command from the Creator. Just as Allah commanded the fire to be cool for Ibrahim, A.S., and just as He commanded the knife not to cut Ishmael, A.S., He commanded the elephant not to touch His sacred house. Decades later, on the day of the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, when Prophet Muhammad's own camel sat down and refused to move, the people said, "The camel has become stubborn." The Prophet corrected them and said, "She has not become stubborn, but she has been restrained by the one who restrained the elephant." Sahih al-Bukhari. Even a beast with no intellect understood the sanctity of the Kaaba. Yet the humans, with all their intelligence and power, were blind to the signs of Allah. Abraha was pushing forward to his own doom, while the elephant was trying to save itself from the wrath of God. The army was stuck. They were frustrated. They did not know that while they were fighting with the elephant on the ground, the skies above them were preparing for a punishment unlike anything the world had ever seen. The horror of the Ababeel birds, the divine punishment. While the army was busy beating the elephant and chaos was spreading through their ranks, the environment suddenly changed. The bright desert sun began to fade. The soldiers looked up, expecting rain, but what they saw terrified them. A dark shadow was sweeping across the sky, coming from the direction of the Red Sea. It was not a storm, it was birds. The Holy Quran describes them as Tayran Ababil, birds in flocks, coming in wave after wave. Scholars of Tafsir mention that these were not giant mythical eagles or monsters. They were small birds, similar in size to swallows or swifts, but they were not ordinary birds. They were the soldiers of Allah. Each bird carried a deadly payload, 3 stones, 1 in its beak and 2 in its claws. These were stones of sijil, hardened, baked clay. They were tiny, no bigger than a chickpea or a lentil. The soldiers laughed when they saw them. How could a pebble hurt a man in iron armor? But they forgot one thing. These stones carried the command of Allah. As the birds flew over the army, they released the stones. The moment a stone hit a soldier, the horror began. These were not ordinary rocks, they acted like piercing bullets. Historical narrations state that when a stone hit a soldier's helmet, it didn't bounce off. It pierced through the iron helmet, went straight through the soldier's skull, passed through his body, and exited into the ground. Even the elephants were not spared. The stones pierced through their thick hides. The Quran describes the aftermath in a terrifying verse. And he made them like eaten straw. What does this mean? The effect of the stones was biological. Wherever a stone hit, the flesh would begin to rot and fall off the bone instantly. It was as if a plague had hit them in seconds. The soldiers began to run in panic, stepping over each other, their bodies disintegrating as they ran. The valley that was filled with arrogant chants was now filled with screams of agony. The fate of Abraha. And what of the arrogant king Abraha? Allah did not grant him a quick death. He was meant to be a lesson for all history. A stone hit him, but it did not kill him instantly. His soldiers picked him up to carry him back to Yemen. As they carried him, his body began to fall apart, piece by piece. His fingers fell off, then his limbs. By the time they reached Yemen, he was nothing but a stump of a man, writhing in unimaginable pain. Historical accounts tell us that his chest eventually split open, exposing his heart, and only then did he die. He wanted to destroy the house of Allah, but Allah destroyed his very body, limb by limb. The mighty army was gone, the elephants were dead, and the Kaaba stood tall, protected not by humans, but by the Lord of the worlds.